The earliest human lived within small bands of nomadic foragers, known as hunter-gatherers. Migration of these groups were generally patterned by changing seasons and environmental conditions that affected the availability of food and other resources. Given their nomadic way of life, one might assume these early peoples lacked notions of borders, territoriality, or land ownership. Yet, research on hunter gatherer groups strongly suggests that these prehistoric humans possessed surprisingly elaborate territorial arrangements. Rather than wandering aimlessly, hunter gatherer groups likely operated within relatively stable local regional foraging ranges, or what might be best described as networks of foraging sites. These networks were shaped by extended kinship or alliance relationships, religious beliefs, and ecological conditions. Some hunter gatherer cultures adopted alternative territorial strategies that controlled resources by emphasizing social cohesion and reciprocity. The Kung bands of southern Africa had rather vague borders for their foreign rangers, often coinciding with natural landmarks, and made little effort to deny access to other bands. Indeed, resources were not considered to be owned until gathered, and goods were to be shared equally once collected. Bands had considerable freedom to access resources in neighboring ranges, especially with those bands sharing kinship ties. Such visits were frequent and generally welcome, so long as the visiting group sought permission and shared some portion of the collected resources with a host band. Similar hospitality was expected in return. A comparable system was common among many Aboriginal groups in Australia, where fluid membership and kinship ties also encouraged territorial and resource sharing among adjacent bands. Each band may have had a specific foraging network, but these areas were not considered exclusive and often overlapped with those neighboring groups. During this transformation from feudal to absolutist to territorial nation states in Europe, Europeans were simultaneously engaged in colonial expansion. As one of the first steps in establishing sovereignty over these new territories, European states began mapping and recognizing them to conform to the territorial state model that was emerging back in Europe. From the European perspective, colonial territories were basically empty lands to be claimed despite the obvious presence of established populations, societies, and governments. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 was one of the first attempts to impose European notions of territorial sovereignty beyond Europe. Spain and Portugal, initially the leading colonial powers, hoped to divide all non-European territories amongst themselves and prevent claims by other European countries. After assuming more direct control from the coastally oriented charter companies during the 19th century, European states quickly moved to claim interior parts of Africa. There seemed a real danger that competition could lead to war. So European leaders met at the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 85 to partition Africa. It was through this conference and later negotiations that Europe's leaders largely created Africa's modern political borders. They did so with a limited information about the lands and peoples they were reorganizing and without input from Africans. A similar process was underway across much of Asia.
우리는 국민이 국가에 소속되어 있다는 사실을 최소한 법적으로는 당연시할지도 모릅니다. 하지만 국가는 사법적 보호와 의무의 방식을 보류하고 박탈할 수 있기 때문에 우리 중 누군가를 대단히 어려운 상태로 몰아갈 수 있습니다. 국가는 우리를 어디에도 소속되지 못하게 할 수도 있고 그러한 상태를 반영구적으로 지속시킬 수도 있습니다. 이럴 때 우리는 우울하고 빈곤에 떨어지며 분노에 떨게 됩니다. 추방되었을 때 우리는 권력 외부에 있는 것이 아닙니다. 이러한 추방된 자들의 상황은 자연 상태에 놓인 벌거벗은 삶이 아니라 박탈의 조건과 상태를 생산하고 유지하도록 고안된 권력과 강제로 구성된 어떤 조건입니다. 한 집단의 이동이 꼭 구체적으로 이미 설립된 국가에서 형이상학적 유기 상태로 옮겨가는 것은 아니라는 말입니다. 주권을 행사하여 헌법이 정한 보호를 정지하고 박탈하는 것은 이러한 이동의 오직 한 측면일 뿐입니다. 이런 식으로 국가의 보호가 중단되면서 발생하는 유기는 다양한 방식으로 일어날 수 있고 이들은 법적인 보호를 받지 못하지만 그렇다고 벌거벗은 삶의 영역에 놓이는 것은 아닙니다. 아무리 극도의 결핍 상태에 놓여 있다 하더라도 벌거벗은 삶으로 귀환하는 사람은 없습니다. 왜냐하면 그 결핍, 박탈, 추방 상황을 만들어내고 유지하는 권력은 분명히 존재하기 때문입니다. 도무지 자신이 어디에 있는지, 앞으로 다른 곳으로 갈 수 있을지, 다른 식으로 존재하고 사랑할 방식을 찾을 수 있을지조차 알 수 없게 되는 것, 역시 권력이 작동한 결과입니다.
Last week, from 3 o'clock morning to 4 o'clock, yeah, 7 people come. They got the key from the security. We don't know how they got the key. They come. Abdullah was sleeping. They opened his door. He was sleeping, and they wake him up, and they took him, deported him. Yeah, you imagine that the shock. You wake up, people, 7 people, big and strong, like the worst terrorists. The way they arrest the worst terrorists. Yeah, and you are surrounded by 7 big guys gather. Yeah, and just he couldn't take many things. Yeah, that was even shocking for people witnessing that. Yeah, some told them that he will never forget that image. Yes, he will always, that image will remain in his mind for the rest of his life. Yeah, and many people were traumatized until now. That shock will remain for a long time. And you waiting. You don't know who will be the next and when. That's the trauma. That's, I don't know if there are any kind of torture worse than that. You go to sign every month. Many times, many people I knew, they went to sign, they never come back. Yeah, yes. Ria is like a Gestapo. Yes. Ria is the only referee, is only the founder, is only the administrator. Nowhere to complain. Yes, and if you complain, you are gone. Transfer. Yeah. And they have kind of punishment centers here. They know, they create that. Yeah. In this system. It's like in prison, you have, different category of prisoner. They have a center here. It's in Foynes, 40 kilometers from Limerick. My friend, is no go area. You don't have aids in the forest. You don't have neighbor. One house only there. All time it's group fighting the group, blood everywhere. Even the guy that you call, they don't come. Most of people who stay there more than 1 year, they are gone, mentally gone. Yes, that's yeah. And nobody come to do reportage. They will say it's a private establishment.
We were told to stand in a queue and wait for instructions, and there on a huge sign above the grey block in front of us was the famous Sainsbury's slogan, "Making life taste better." We were sorted into teams. I was told to work in a butchery unit with some of the Eastern Europeans and one Scottish woman. We put on uniforms and caps and were taken across the wet, slippery butchery floor to the unit to join a team of local workers. There was no instruction or training. Within seconds, I was machine cutting pork, learning how to load meat into the cutter by copying my fellow workers. I was told to separate the good meat from the bad meat, which was which. For the second hour, we packaged the cut up pork, taking it from a vast, stomach-turning mountain of raw meat. For the third hour, we put packages into cardboard boxes and refrigerated them. It was hard to adjust to the fast pace and the monotony. When your mind can't catch up with the speed of your body, you switch off your mind. It becomes disengaged from your physical being, and you feel your body becoming a cog in a machine. But then tiredness sets in, and you're reminded you're not a cog, but human. I felt drained and stiff from standing in the same position for 3 hours. I felt sick at the sight and smell of so much blood. The precious half-hour break passed in what felt like 10 minutes. It took 3 minutes to go upstairs and take off our filthy uniforms before being allowed into the canteen. 27 minutes left. Some of my fellow workers were slumped on chairs, their eyes shut. The Scottish woman was smoking, looking out of the window. She told me she was from Aberdeen and had come south to look for work. I went to the agency like you people did, she said. But I didn't need anyone to lead me into the agency. It's more difficult for you people, isn't it? The bell went. Back to uniform, back to meat, and the work got harder. Now we were made to unload large chunks of frozen pork ribs, each weighing about 10 kilograms. I found it hard to manage. We worked non-stop as box after box of ribs was sent to us. The supervisor was nearby, keeping his eye on us. All the workers kept their heads down. During the fifth hour, my feet became numb and I had backache from lifting the heavy ribs. A Polish worker told me they were going to Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Marks and Spencer, and Waitrose. I later found out that Grampian processes 3.6 million pigs a year at this site in Suffolk. We were just a tiny part of this process, each of us no more than a replaceable cog. At 11:30 p.m. the shift finished. We were too tired and cold to talk. We went to the gate to wait for the minibus, the agency minibus, to collect us. It was raining as we stood there, waiting in the dark. "Why are they always doing this to us?" said one of the Brazilian workers. "The agency bastards deduct £2 a day from our wages for transport, but they're always late." Half an hour later, the bus rolled up. Workers were dropped off at various places during the long drive home. We got back to Thetford at 1:30 a.m. I had no strength to take notes. I went back to my mattress and fell asleep. I had earned £28 and 42 pence.
Between 2016 and 2019, band teacher Mi lived and worked in Sagamihara City in Japan. It's only just over 30 minutes train ride from a part of Tokyo where I lived and worked in the same years. Chami was then a technical intern trainee, or Kinojishusei. The technical internship training program is Japan's temporary guest worker scheme, having been implemented for almost 3 decades, disguised as a training program to transfer technology and expertise of Japanese industries to neighboring countries. But in fact, it is a way to fill labor shortages of industries such as agriculture, fisheries, manufacturing, construction, and caregiving with cheap labor of young migrants. The system allows modern-day slavery. Chami was a technical intern trainee at a food processing factory in Sagamihara. While we both were living close to each other, I might have eaten food processed at the factory where she worked. We might have passed by each other in a crowded station, or even sat nearby in a coffee shop. We never had a chance to meet, but existed together. 私の夢は化粧品の店を開くことです。名前は桜。壁は白とピンクに塗ります。This was your dream. In summer 2019, we both left Tokyo and flew back to our hometowns for a few months. And in autumn, we both arrived here in the UK, only a few weeks apart, but through different routes unequally. The route only available to you was very dangerous and inhumane. It took away your dream, future, and life in a refrigerated lorry container before we could finally meet. Chasing dreams and seeking better lives for you and your loved ones are not crime. Judging individual smugglers and lorry drivers isn't enough justice for those who have lost their lives to the UK's hostile environment policies, institutionalized racism and global capitalism that keeps migrants and blue-collar workers to be disposable labor. Not only here in the West, but also in the East and in my own home country, Japan.
My name is Subash and I'm a rapper from Singapore. The rights of migrant working class folk who travel to find better lives and better opportunities. These rights are denied almost everywhere as part of globally interconnected systems of racism and exploitation, and we all indirectly benefit from this. Until they have the right to self-organize, the power to self-organize in the places that they move to, we who have relative privilege must actively advocate for them, for their rights, to end their exploitation, and very importantly, for their safe passage to these places they move to find their better life. This is a poem I wrote about migrant justice in Singapore. It's called Utopia. We live in a system that has normalized us to window shop women as ready-made maids and to walk oblivious to a brown man stopped and ID checked because he's posed as some kind of a threat. And to see overcrowded lorries of sleep-deprived men riding in the back with the equipment. When New Year's wishes are video calls from parents to children they haven't seen in years because they have left their children to raise ours, to build our buildings and fulfill our pleasures in this Southeast Asian utopia. It's 6 days a week, 12-hour-a-day shifts for these men of gifts. It's backbreaking labor. Building our marina bays and park colonials and Straits clans. We are the new colonialists. They slave away in the heat so you can enjoy your poolside spray tans. They have sweat equity on stolen sand. But this is an access card only entrance. Little India is policed ad nauseum. We should have a whole museum in honor of the displaced kings and queens who have literally built this nation, but to us, they are dispensable. One goes, another comes. There will always be a hungry mouth or illusion of grandeur that we will not fulfill, and just because they may be happy here does not make this just. That's why I'm feeling survivor's guilt in a land they built, wondering if spitting this truth in silk is saliva spilt, because who is going to stand up for Singapore? The first step to justice is recognizing that we are all exploited, albeit to different levels. They are as Singaporean as we, because to live in Singapore means to be trapped in a system where we serve to create value for corporations and those in power. We are merely the more valuable cogs. So is this disparity, geographical destiny, or calculated cycles of poverty? Wealth is sequestered in a sliver we will never see. We need a value shift in our society where influencers get paid more in loading fees. So I wonder what Channel News Asia ever wanted from me. Is it a quick snapshot of poverty because a single voice cannot end socioeconomic inequality in my country? This is utopia.
I don't dare ask who you are, selling your strength out on the street. The rich need someone to put up their new houses. They don't care who you are, where you come from. I care. You are the dark alluvial soil, torn from the river bend, the jagged rock, wrenched from the mountain. One difference though, hunger gnaws at your guts. These days every village must be a great city. Stacks of food shimmer and dance in the street. Not lack of work, but this new life gives birth to new lines of workers. A new sky must mean new kinds of clouds. Dust crawls up the road. The crowd thins out. No one left but you. I recognize you now. The look of quiet, tenacity, the scar, the last broken shard of war. 1993.
सर मुझको एक बार बस बता तो दीजिए कि बॉडी है कि क्या है।
मुझे सर राइट नहीं है बोलने का। मैं
आपको
थर्ड
क्या
क्लास
है?
का
आपने
एक पुलिस
क्या-
ऑफिसर
ये
हूँ।
जल क्या रहा है आपके सामने? ये तो
थर्ड
बता
स्केल
दीजिए।
का पुलिस ऑफिसर हूँ। मुझे बोलने का अधिकार नहीं हिंदुस्तान
आप
में।
लोग खड़े, किसी को तो पता होगा
मैं
क्या है
कोतवाल
ये?
हो सकता हूँ पर बोल नहीं सकता हूँ मैं।
अच्छा कोई तो बता दे सर, हमको जरा बता दीजिए।
जो बोल सकता है वो बोले।
नहीं कौन, ये क्या चल रहा है इतना बस बता दीजिए सर, बस इतना सा मुझे बता दीजिए। बस मुझे information दीजिए।
मैं क्राइम
ये
ब्रांच
अभी
में
आप बोल रहे
हूँ।
थे ना कि कुछ और चल रहा है।
मुझे आई डोंट नो।
नहीं अभी
मैं बाहर से हूँ।
नहीं अभी आपने मुझे बोला कि नहीं बॉडी नहीं है। क्या है सर, बॉडी है कि नहीं है?
मेरी झूठ।
What is the shape of your absence? What is the sound of your silence? I can see that a story has been crafted here, out of selected bits and pieces, some fragments of skin, some skeleton puzzles. But I cannot recognize you. It is a scene frozen in time, a carefully arranged pose. Light design and its shadows, adding drama of sorts. The sutures in your skin are strategically hidden. Here you are become both the archetype and the shadow on the cave wall. A tiger stands for all tigers. A tiger is the tiger. A viperfish is the viperfish. Glass is now where your eyes once were. Did they see the hunter? Did he shoot you from the back, from afar, catch you in a net? He has slain you for your tusks, for your pelt. He has slain the others for the land, for their daughters, for the riches in your soils. He has taken your carcass, your lives, all the bounty in these halls, all this ivory, all this gold, all these bones.
Less than 2 months ago, I was told by 2 doctors, one female and one male, that I would have to have breast surgery, and that there was a 60 to 80% chance that the tumor was malignant. In becoming forcibly and essentially aware of my mortality, and of what I wished and wanted for my life, however short it might be. Priorities and omissions became strongly etched into a merciless light, and what I most regretted were my silences. Of what had I ever been afraid? To question or to speak as I believed could have meant pain or death. But we all hurt in so many different ways, all the time. And pain will either change or end. Death, on the other hand, is the final silence. And that might be coming quickly now, without regard for whether I have ever spoken what needed to be said, or had only betrayed myself into small silences while I planned someday to speak, or waited for someone else's words. And I began to recognize a source of power within myself that comes from the knowledge that while it is most desirable not to be afraid, learning to put fear into a perspective gave me great strength. My silence had not protected me. Your silence will not protect you. But for every real word spoken, for every attempt I had ever made to speak those truths for which I am still seeking, I had made a contact with other women while we examined the words to fit a world in which we all believed, bridging our differences. And it was the concern and caring of all these women which gave me strength and enabled me to scrutinize the essentials of my living. And of course, I am afraid, because the transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation, and that always seems fraught with danger. But my daughter, when I told her of our topic and my difficulty with it, said, "Tell them about how you are never really a whole person if you remain silent, because there's always that one little piece inside you that wants to be spoken out. And if you keep ignoring it, it gets madder and madder and hotter. And if you don't speak it out, one day it will just up and punch you in the mouth from the inside. And there are so many silences to be broken."
어제도 하룻밤 나그네 집에 가마귀 가왁가왁 울며 새었소. 오늘은 또 몇 시니 어디로 갈까? 산으로 올라갈까? 들로 갈까? 오라는 곳이 없어 나는 못 가오. 말 마소. 내 집도 정주 곽산 차가고 배 가는 곳이라오. 여보소, 공중에 저 기러기. 공중엔 길 있어서 잘 가는가? 여보소, 공중에 저 기러기. 열십자 복판에 내가 섰소. 갈래갈래 갈린 길이라도 내게 다이 갈 길은 하나 없소.